So, welcome everybody, and I'm pleased that we can have Eloísa Lewis here for our February speaker. Um, and I'm just going to do the briefest of introductions, and then I'll let you fill that in as you want to. Okay. Eloísa is with an organization called New Climate Culture, and she's a climate scientist and permaculture designer from the Maricopa and Pima territories of Arizona. Who teaches about decolonization in corporate and institutional spaces. And her topic tonight is called Trauma Circle Medicine. So welcome, Eloísa, and I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me, everyone. I love permaculture so much. It's just my favorite thing in the world. So it's great always to be with permaculture friends. I also have just been certified with JADAM, which is the kind of child of Korean natural farming. If anyone is interested in that, it's works well with permaculture. So yes, I'm the founder of New Climate Culture, and I work with a lot of really cool, lovely people such as yourselves, and we're all just out here loving life with a capital L. And so thanks for being here for Trauma Circle Medicine, because I speak on a wide range of topics, from carbon sequestration to the built environment and watershed management, as well as like business development, event design. But I have to say that Trauma Circle Medicine really is the reason why one of my favorite things to teach, and kind of the reason why I even started my company in the first place, because that was like the first topics that I was teaching as someone with an expertise in decolonization. And because this is my particular area of research in that field that I think is the most unique. So if anyone has any questions, just go ahead and hop in and either raise your hand or just unmute yourself and interrupt me. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever's coming alive in you is important to me, and I would love to hear it. There's no stupid questions. And I do want to say, since we're talking about trauma tonight, like there might be topics that stimulate your nervous system or your body, and so I just want to remind everyone to ground themselves, make sure that, like, you take a second to breathe, or like put your feet on the ground, or even like if you want to walk away and go have like a break from the conversation, anything like that, that's totally fine. That's really normal and encouraged. I think that, like, so to begin with, like, this is a circle right now. We're all people, not physically sitting in a circle, but we circled up in a gathering. And so yeah, we're just here to basically share within that circle, and the circle is like held as long as we're here, and anyone can like leave the circle and rejoin the circle if they need to, whether that's like virtually or physically. I always make sure that that's just something that I like to start every workshop with, because I really encourage listening to everyone's body and needs. Listen to your own body, listen to your own needs, respect them. And it's very hard to make me feel like offended or anything. So just go ahead and just like let loose. This is the space to do it. So okay, great. So then now I'll start sharing my screen, and we can just look over like what my company does for the beginning. So basically, just a quick explanation of New Climate Culture is that we are doing carbon sinks, basically. So we're trying to help people create businesses with a process called insetting, which is making carbon sequestration sinks that are by farming and by wildcrafting. And focusing on that as our main kind of pitch and our sale and our design consulting. And then we do a lot of teaching and just what else do we do? We are consulting for businesses really all across the spectrum in the corporate world, like from cryptocurrencies and sustainable fashion brands to major food brands and universities. So that's what New Climate Culture does. So we're in like architecture firms, like we're just kind of that's why we're a think tank. That's why we call ourselves a think tank. We have like a really flexible group, and I'm just like the operations manager who puts the right people to the right projects. And so New Climate Culture is always looking for partners, and we're setting up like a partnership program in the next few months where we're going to allow and encourage permaculture designers and people in the sustainability sphere, like Korean natural farming and Jadam and earthen building and other just specialties, to partner with us to like submit kind of like a resume for partnership. And then once we confirm, then we can share like a sales process. So that's just to introduce ourselves. And we like to say like we're just like a no greenwashing guarantee, no bullshit, no greenwashing is our kind of our thing. Because for me, like I've been in climate consulting, the climate consulting sphere for 4 years, but I've been in the climate sphere for 10. And so when in the last 4 years from auditing other companies and being in the marketplace, there's just like a lot of bullshit and a lot of greenwashing. So that's what we say. Our tagline is like, we're not that, we're something different. Because I'm really strict about like what I basically what I want to share and what I want to allow when I work with a company. So I'm pretty like strict about making sure that everything is very non-toxic and low energy, and just refining things down to simplicity and longevity. Those are the two major design forces that I like to put at the front of what we do, which is just focusing on that low maintenance, low cost, high yield systems for communities and non-toxic, and really getting away from relying on the grid, whether that's a corporate grid or a government grid. That's why we're all here as permaculture designers. So here's the presentation of trauma circle medicine. And first of all, like, okay, so what is trauma circle medicine and what is circle medicine in the first place? Because they're two separate things. So circle medicine is really about examining like cultural examples where communities come together to practice peace as a group. So there's many ways that this happens. And so one of the ways that I circle, for example, it could be like a circle of people shucking seeds. That's like a circle that's practicing peace. Or it could be like a circle of people having a potluck. That's practicing peace. Or it could be like what I do in Canada, which is I like to dance in circles. So I like drum circles and like ciphers. So I actually am a part of the hip hop community, and I dance battle people as a form of peaceful activity. Again, just communal peaceful activity. And these circles and circle medicine is about reconnecting and recreating new culture and peaceful culture so that we can focus on what is community itself, and like how do we interface with our community, and how do we create healthy social systems and systems of therapy that are not individualized. Like, because I know a lot of people including myself like have done personalized therapy, but I've never found like more healing than in community. So that's why I'm kind of obsessed with trauma circle medicine. So trauma circle medicine is specifically circle medicine, or circling is another way to say it. So like, and the reason why we use the word circle and circling is because we're trying to avoid any particular culture. A lot of cultures use different terms for gatherings, and we want to try to avoid using one particular culture's terminology unless we're a part of that culture. Like if I was Indigenous, I might say, oh, we have powwows. I go to powwows and I host powwows. Or if I was like a DJ or a judge in the hip hop community, since I just go to the circles, I don't host them, they would say like, well, I host ciphers. So those are just a couple examples of what circle is, and trauma circle medicine is my specialty. And I basically came up with this name and came up with this process with community. And it's been passed down and into my hands from the cultures that I've interacted with and I've combined. And what are those cultures? So like, who trained me in trauma circle medicine? Well, first of all, what it is just it's to focus on healing our trauma. So that's the particular form of peace practicing we're doing. And that's why it's like a little bit more edgy, because not every circle is a space for trauma and for like experiencing and expressing and basically defining and healing what trauma is. So that is why I came up with trauma circle medicine and why I participated in it. And what other groups have called it in general was just circling when I first started like meeting with other groups. And so the groups that taught me were primarily from Occupy, so occupiers, Rainbow Gathering, Rainbow Family, Zapatistas, and Lakota, Navajo, Apache tribe, Odom tribe, as well as just and then as well as the hip hop community now, since I've now integrated trauma circle medicine up in Canada, and now I'm in Montreal, and I'm trying to spread it more on the East Coast here. So that's the background of trauma circle medicine and where that word, that phrase comes from, and where I gathered the information for this and the practice. And I also have been in this practice for a decade. So I discovered this process 10 years ago. I guess 11 now. I think I was 19 and I'm 30. So yeah, so it's been a big time for me, and really important to me, really healing for me, since I'm someone who is definitely like had a lot of trauma in my childhood. And so I'll leave it at that for now, and we can move on to the next thing. So yeah, that's me. And I like to put myself with all these animals as part of what my community is. When I define myself, I like to bring in other species, because right now we're going to focus on humans, but I think that animals are our allies, our analogs, our friends, our teachers, and our reflections. So that's also another way to think about like what violence is and what equity is and what trauma is also by expanding and thinking into the balance of ecosystems. So how do we balance the ecosystem of the self, the ecosystem of our community, and then the ecosystem of the planet, or the bioregion? So my really quick bio, to just say a little bit more, is that I'm an expert in life affirming strategies. So I consider trauma circle medicine a life affirming strategy that focuses not on retribution, which means like an eye for an eye, but focuses instead on rehabilitation, or like not just an eye for an eye, but like imprisonment, stuff like that, punishment. It focuses less on punishment and more on rehabilitation. So that's what life affirming strategies are in general, from my study and understanding of psychology and decolonization. So I focus mostly on the built environment and land back, the land back movement. That's something I'm a part of because I am a water protector and a land defender. Part of most of my last decade has been living in demonstration sites, eco-cities, and villages, and anarchist communities, and indigenous communities, basically helping protect and trying to shut down oil pipeline development and offshore drilling and things like that, and connect with other biologists along the way. So I share about trauma and economics. Those are, again, the center of the work, and that's me. So I put this picture here just because we know that we're envisioning the future, and we're thinking about community, and we're thinking about what it can look like. And that requires a lot of imagination and a lot of patience, and a lot of listening, because really healing a community, we all know, especially, again, y'all are permaculture designers or permaculture informed or permaculture community, what a circle is and what a community is putting a bunch of people's needs together into the same container, and then navigating those needs in a way that's equitable. So that's important, and that's why trauma comes into play, because it's incredibly difficult to work through community sometimes and make plans and make things happen when there's still a lot of suffering going on in the community, and we want to, and a lot of needs that aren't being met. So what is community? We're definitely thinking about like where I've come from community. So this is a photo of a rainbow gathering, and this is a painting that I did at my friend's commune in Arizona, Drop Seeds Not Bombs. And these are all photos from my real life. So these are different communities and places and spaces that I find. I'm a Sufi Muslim, so I also find community there. I've taught permaculture actually in mosques before, so that's a cool intersection. I like to share everything with everyone. I like to bring everyone into the same interplanetary and planetary love. So I pretty much consider myself circling or gathering all the time, and I want to invite people to think about that as well, that like you're always circling in a way, whether that's like with a small household or with a large, with the entire world, you know, all the way to the planet. And so yeah, so I've traveled around the world, and these are just, again, some more photos where I've like had my workshops and some people that I've done the workshops with. So right, so I guess like if there's any questions about community, we're moving on. It's pretty simple, but literally I put it in capitals. Like, it's about a unity, it's about a symbiosis. And how do we get there? So the first thing that I want to share is about nonviolent communication, because that's a whole workshop in and of itself. So I have this presentation. I'm going to work through everything as quickly as possible because there's so much to share and there's so little time. So I'm going to speak quickly. I hope that that's okay with everyone. So yeah, radical nonviolent communication. What is it? Why is it radical? Because it's not about punishment, humiliation, or the control of others. It's not about shame. It's about well-being and autonomy first and foremost. It's really about consent. So like, if I just like want to respect someone, I'm going to tell them the most information possible so that they can consent. Like, let's say I'm selling you a car, one of the wheels is flat, but I don't tell you and I sell it to you. Well, that's not an entirely consensual transaction, assuming I know that the wheel is flat. So another way to think about it is also like, I was recently on a commune in Pennsylvania where the landowner kissed my face unconsensually, and I was really uncomfortable with that. So we had to have a conversation about consent. So I just encourage everyone to respect your own personal boundaries and other people's boundaries, and try and give as much consent to others as you would also want to receive, which is why a lot of times it's important to tell the truth. So let's see. Right, social justice. So that's what we're also thinking about, and bringing this to like bringing this information to social justice spaces, especially coming from Occupy and Rainbow gatherings. So yeah, separation rooted in superiority, reinforced by the phenomena of scarcity. So the idea is like, why is violence committed if we have everything? Theoretically, we have all of our needs met here on Earth. We have enough water to go around, enough land and food to go around, but for some reason there's so much violence happening on us that it's mostly caused by this divide of elitism and superiority of who gets access to resources and when, including like time as a resource. So right, the norms of competition valued over cooperation, punishment, reward, guilt and shame, separateness, elitism, manipulation, exploitation, rhetoric. Rhetoric is basically the study of how to convince people, but without having good arguments. So it's more about like playing on emotions and playing into manipulation tactics, instead of, again, being kind of like giving someone the most honest representation of the information. And yeah, we also, in systems like that, in systems of retribution and separateness, we're going to be threatened to speak truth to power. So that's the most dangerous part of it, is that when we're afraid of being beaten, killed, or shamed publicly or anything like that, it's going to decrease our confidence in our ability to basically just speak freely and speak honestly and work through those ideas, because it's not that like every idea is a good one or a valid one or a nonviolent one, but part of being a human and being in community is helping your community and your human family understand why they are being violent and that what they're doing is violent. So creating a safe space, that's the circles. We're prioritizing what our needs are and how they are served. That's the question of nonviolent communication. That's the core. Are we meeting our needs? If not, what can we do so that everyone's needs are met? So like the most basic thing that you can do in a trauma circle is pass around a talking stick and say, what are everyone's needs and how are they served? And are they being served? And how can we meet each other's needs? And if you're doing that, you've begun the process of the healing, so that everyone can share. Also, an important part of my practice is that people can speak as long as they want. There's no limit. There's when I have a circle, so this is a teaching about the circle. We're not going to talk about our traumas together right now. If we were talking about our individual personal traumas in our community, that would be us in a trauma circle. Right now, we're just in a circle because I'm teaching you about it, but we're not going to be practicing it together tonight. So that's just the difference that I'm saying, is that like when we're getting into it, we're really getting into the personal aspects. And when I do a circle, it could be an 8-hour, 10-hour, or several days, depending on the community. Sometimes circles last 7 days. I've been in circles like that where you come in the morning and you start the circle at 10 in the morning and you end the circle at 6 p.m. and then you do it all over again the next day, and you do it all over again the next day until everyone has spoken as much as they need to speak. That's really, really important to healing trauma, because a lot of people feel that they're not able to fully express themselves because they're being rushed or shut down by others or a time expectation. And so that's not how I operate or how my circles operate. We always make sure that we don't close the circle until every single person in the circle has consents that what has needed to have been said has been said. And so, okay. So, we're going to increase our ability to live with choice, meaning, and connection by respecting consent and nonviolent communication, connect empathetically with the self and others to have more satisfying relationships. Like literally this stuff makes us more connected. I think that it was James Baldwin who said, like, it's our pain that we use to understand the human condition. It's our shared pain that connects us the most. And I definitely agree that like human suffering and pain are the bedrock of basically everyone goes through that. But not everyone goes through like a charmed life. So we're going to increase our capacity to basically understand people who are in extreme pain and suffering, because those people tend to be the most violent. And so we need to ask ourselves why they're being violent, and in order to do that, we need to empathetically understand their suffering. Or at least, if I believe, again, this is my theory. So the abundance mindset outgrows scarcity. This is really common in permaculture communities these days, I think, to hear this type of terminology and spiritual communities, but it's really no joke. The idea that there is enough love, there's enough time, there's enough peace, there's enough complexity in this universe that we can focus on being peaceful, because I think that a lot of times we get ripped out of peaceful states and dragged out of peaceful states because we're so pressured by scarcity, whether that's real or imagined scarcity. But both exist. So no gaslighting. Respecting our needs through establishing boundaries and consensual agreements. Again, this is the core of what nonviolent communication is, if I can just reiterate it. So toolbox, I'm going to skip forward. We're talking about feelings. I give people some words and some frameworks to look through. So this is really useful, thinking about how you're gonna phrase something as an observation and making sure that you claim your own, instead of, like, for example, just a simple switch would be like, instead of saying, hey, you did this to me and I didn't like it, you can say, when you did this, I didn't like it. And like, you can just change your language just slightly to make sure that you're observing, remembering, imagining, evaluating, and expressing when it does not contribute to your well-being and how, so that the person can understand. Because sometimes people, and that's just the first step in the process, is trying to clearly express to someone, I'm not blaming, I'm not criticizing, and you also want to hear how you are without blame or criticism. You just want to get down to like, what's the process, what's the function that's breaking down, how I feel, what I need or value. Great ways to start sentences. Again, really I really try to avoid making any assumptions about what other people are thinking. That's very dangerous. None of us are real mind readers, no matter how empathetic we are. You can never really truly know what's going on in someone else's life or mind without them showing or expressing to you what it is. So that's just an important thing to remember, because it can be really violent when people think that they know what you're thinking, and then they want to put that on you. Okay, so right. And then when it comes to requests, we want to ask, would you be willing, or would you like, and offer them a choice. We want to offer people a choice, and then they can make a choice to either consent or not. And then you can make the decision that you want to either maintain that relationship, or adjust the relationship, or end the relationship. So yeah, some great ways to think about this conversation again is by thinking about, what are we giving, what are we taking, what are we allowing, and what are we receiving in community. And thinking about that will help us simplify and depersonalize what the emotional reality is when emotions get really complex. Again, what are we giving, what are we taking, what are we allowing and receiving? Those are all questions of consent. So conflict, creativity, and resolution create real human connection. So that's sometimes, yeah, I'm not the first person to say this, but I'll definitely say it every day of my life. Conflict creates the most interesting change. And it's one of the most interesting spaces for growth. So a lot of people are conflict averse, but the reason why I do this work is I'm like the opposite. I'm like conflict hungry. I love pushing myself and others to the boundaries of what we can peacefully confront. And I think that that's critical, because that's, again, where the most interesting and powerful growth happens on an individual or community level. So my whole thing is like becoming everything about trauma circle medicine and circle medicine, but definitely trauma circle medicine is really toward solving conflicts and recognizing that conflict is actually a gift of its own kind. So it comes with a lot of patience, trust, and perseverance to get to do this type of work with community, because it's vulnerable. And yeah, that's that radical honesty. Like, you have to trust in being radically honest in order for it to work. So like when you talk about your personal trauma with the community, it's just important to try and, again, be vulnerable, because I know it's really hard, especially some people have gone through some pretty like jarring, nauseating things, and it might be even with someone in the community. So just as an example of like this practice that I've done in the field is like, I've worked in a village where there was a sexual assault. So there was someone accused of the assault and then the victim of the assault. And they were both in the circle to discuss the trauma with the entire community, because that's how the community functions. It already was set up that way. That was one of the places where I learned how to do this, because they were already in the practice. So that's where I learned it. And to see that process unfold again and again, that was only one of many times I've seen that dynamic play out of sexual assault and victim in the circle working through it together. And something that was cool about the circle too is that like everyone brought people from both sides. Like there was the general community present, but then the accused assailant brought all of his friends to the circle to support him emotionally and support his character and help him transmute this problem. And then the victim brought all of her friends to help support her confrontation of the issue and explain how it was assault, and that it was assault, and that this type of behavior cannot happen in the community again. So that's it. Again, it takes a lot of trust, perseverance. That particular circle, that was my first circle of that kind, took 3 days for resolution. So I feel statements are great again, like, or avoid making statements like you should know better, or someone acted this way. I feel is should be used like I feel confused because, or I feel anxious when. That's when fear is going to be useful. That's when, yeah, feel is going to be useful. And I feel something about another person and projecting onto them. That's really dangerous, because that's asking someone to be defensive, basically. Like, it's already a situation of self-defense. So if you're going to accuse with your feelings, it's more important to ask with your feelings. Right. So we frame our needs first, and then we frame our requests. And our needs are recognized as an honor to respect. So that's the thing. When someone tells me their needs, I'm like, wow, I'm so honored that you would share that information with me, because that's not information that like you owe me, right? Like, nobody owes their personal vulnerable life and mind and conversation to anyone else. So that's a fundamental thing as well, is to recognize that, like, oh, this is an honor, that the sharing is an honor, and it's not a burden. To weigh these needs. And yeah, Marshall Rosenberg said this great quote: every judgment is a tragic expression of a beautiful need. So that's good food for thought. So yeah, I'm gonna skip this. Just focusing on the needs sticks to the accountability. My puppy's barking in his sleep right now. Right. So importantly, the history of war, slavery, prison, and punishment has forged the dominant human struggle narrative. We all can like look at the last 1,000 years or 100 years and find that there's a lot of conflict, struggle, war, slavery, prison, and punishment. And so, like, where do we find legacies and create legacies of peace? And how do we outgrow these old systems? And I believe that's with the practice of this whole form of trauma circle medicine that has many facets: wellness circles, social justice movements, climate reversal, resiliency, decolonization. Everything is connected there. So yeah, valuing common sense over and cooperation over existential competition or control. It's definitely, control is hard for a lot of people. That's probably like the most difficult thing to transition in general, from what I find, is the ability for people to give up control over others, or over like a project or something like that. And that's why consensus is so important, and making consensus agreements and voting and stuff, so that when that control needs to be given up, it comes from not just one person necessarily, but comes from the group, that can provide safety for the group. So yep, like the peaceful renaissance begins within, goes to the home, and voyages into the neighborhood. All right, so I'm gonna get back to the original presentation now that we've quickly gone through what is NVC. So what is peacekeeping, circle medicine, and self-defense? We've talked about circle medicine a bit. I want to get into peacekeeping with where is it? Let's see. Not there. Oh, I don't know where it is. Okay, I'll have to pull it up. It's gonna be gather. It's gonna be the gather file. Oh no, sorry everyone. I thought I had it up already, but I must have accidentally closed it. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, what? Can't open. Which one's gonna open? Okay. So this is a free PDF that I offer. So if anybody wants this, just send me an email. It's pretty great. It's a 22-page invitation I made to rainbow gatherings. So if you've already gone to rainbow gatherings, then sorry for the, review, but basically this is like a full protocol for the intense, like basically it's a guide for making communities that are decentralized, off the grid, no police, no military involvement, no corporate no money, so they're decommodified spaces, no exchange of money. It's a really great manual I made in 2018, and I'm happy to share it. So for peacekeeping, what is peacekeeping? This is just one community's example, so that's why I'm highlighting it. So this is the national gathering that happens every summer in the US, and it happens in a different bioregion every summer, so that there's for lots of reasons. And on July 4th, that's like the main celebration day, and that's for this culture, it's the day that we pray for peace at rainbow gatherings. If you're a rainbow family, it's the day that, we pray every day for peace, but it's on the 4th we practice our prayer by coming from dawn and awakening forward. We observe silence, so it's a day of silence until noon, when we break the silence with a group Om, and then we celebrate and have a big party. And then if violence occurs at any time in the gathering, it's about a month and a half long to 2 months, depending on your involvement with the group. So if any violence occurs in the gathering, we have this protocol of Shantasina. So you're supposed to yell out Shantasina if something's happening that you observe or that you're a part of. Like, even, or like if I'm worried that I'm about to have like a PTSD episode, I might yell Shantasina for help so that people can help me from like hallucinating or something like that. Because some people like me who have extreme complex PTSD, we like will have panic attacks and hallucinate if our nervous system becomes too unregulated. So it's really nice to have this tool. And Shantasina means peacekeeper in Hindi, I believe. So when we yell that out, the community already knows, because again, this is a community already in this practice, it's already their culture. So if they hear that, or if I heard that, or if you heard that and we were there, you would go toward that, the sound of that person's cry for help, essentially, and to be either a witness or to directly be of aid or of service. So there's always like workshops for this because things happen. And I also want to say, like, in the world, this is not just at rainbow gatherings, but in the world, not everyone is a pacifist. So like, for example, like conflicts happen, real conflicts happen where someone like breaks another person's nose or jaw or steals or something like that. And that's something that we have to respond to with Shantasina, regardless. So, and some people carry weapons on them. That's what the world is. We're talking about a whole planet. So we're thinking about all these people. And yeah, consent is liberatory. Less than a no is still not a yes. We really are talking about like enthusiastic and explicit consent in general. And definitely victims are not to blame. And also false accusers are just perpetuating the rape culture, the rape of land, the rape of people, the rape of domesticated animals. So we really, again, we're about honesty. We're really about needs. We're really about how our needs being met, as the focus, and just asking for permission. So that's a little background there. And then I'm not going to go through the full text because it's 22 pages and it's quite a lot, but let's see. Yeah, the goal of Shantasena is to this is a good page. The core of the gathering is peaceful communication. Major decisions are made by consensus. Anyone who claims that their personal agenda is the agenda of a gathering is misunderstanding the purpose of the gathering. It's a peaceful and open event organized around a central day of prayer. Traditions live and die by those who choose to observe them and carry them or not. No individual can encompass rainbow. So you could also think of this as like, you can apply this to any community. You can just replace rainbow with like any community name. So no individual can encompass rainbow or dictate the entirety of its scope. Rainbow gatherings are places where community members can voice their own personal thoughts and philosophies, networking with other people who are interested in free and open communities. The goal of Shantasena is to engage with people who are being unpeaceful and unsafe and restore the peace. In some extreme cases, groups practicing in Shantasena have chosen to remove individuals from gatherings or communities, and that's okay. Like sometimes you can't resolve something in a way that like the majority will be satisfied and healthy and happy, or the victim. So like that's all then time to think about separation. And separation is okay. Separation is not necessarily violence. Again, there's a lot of abundance in the world. So even if I was exiled from a community, I would still find that there would be other communities that would help me and work through problems with me. And that's another important thing, because some people get really caught up on feeling abandoned by a community, but sometimes they're just incompatible with that community. So yeah, people have been removed, and it's happened that some people have chosen to involve police and press charges, and that's a personal choice, but not one that I like endorse, obviously, since I'm trying to teach people how to not do that. But I always have to warn people that like, yo, you're in the world, like anyone can do anything at any time, including to me. Like people have threatened me with the police, have called the police on me, have put me in all kinds of situations, and I had to maintain my own personal peace above anything else, despite the violence that was against my body and my land. So when people create unsafe spaces, the gathering community responds to regulate itself, and that's really what Shantasena and what the trauma circle is about, is like it's a response for self-regulation instead of outsourcing trauma to like professionals who might be participating in colonization still, essentially. So and commodification of health. And so this is really about relying on common sense and community instead of outsourcing the labor of healing. So all right. And self-defense, like that's great. That's important, because I'm someone I used to be a pacifist until I had an ex-boyfriend who tried to literally murder me with his bare hands when he had a psychotic break. So I like have infinite love for everyone, including this person. But that was when I decided to learn self-defense, and I started carrying like, well, I traveled around the country hitchhiking by myself, and I had a knife on me for protection, since I was like by myself traveling on the road. I think that that's normal. So I just want to say that, because a lot of people forget, like especially really privileged people forget that like some of us have grown up or have lived in communities where everyone carries a weapon, and you might not trust as easily, or you might have PTSD or other complex factors that don't just make it easy to sit down and meditate and be healed. You can't just sit down cross-legged and kumbaya, because you might get shot for doing that in the neighborhood or something like that. So these are important things to think about, because self-defense is real and valid. That's another part of, again, addressing trauma, because if you come in I'm just saying my own self as an example, like if you come in my house and disrespect someone like physically in my household or something, like you might get disrespected physically, and it's not because it's an eye for an eye, it's because it's like you might get thrown out of the establishment or something like that physically. Or you might, or it might not be me that takes care of it, is another way of saying it. So basically, it's important for consent to have community guidelines and rules so that people can know what to expect when they step into a space or out of one. So like when people come and hang out with me and my friends and stuff, that's something that I warn them about, is that like, hey, like I'm a peacemaker, but I'm also someone who believes in self-defense. And that I think is for my own protection, so that people can expect that we have to be respectful of one another, because there might be consequences, which is different than trying to punish and imprison and stuff like that. It's about anarchy, essentially. It's about protecting consent. And if people are going to come into my community or my home and disrespect the agreements we've made, then they're no longer respecting the consensual agreements we've made, and it might become dangerous for anyone. So the point is to make sure that we have really explicit, clear agreements about who we are and what we expect from one another, and that helps reduce the need for self-defense. So this is just a cute little photo of some designs for future eco-cities, and then at the bottom here, this is a garden at Arco Santi, a garden bed at Arco Santi in Arizona that my friends worked on. So an invitation to gather, we looked at that already. And again, like I'm happy to send that document to anybody. It's a really important document, I find. And I recommend going to rainbow gatherings, because I think that rainbow gatherings are the most interesting intersection of permaculture and festival culture that exists, because it's decommodified. So it's kind of this thing that can't exist anywhere in the world except for in that form, where it's free food, free entry, free admission, and free education, and everyone in the world is invited. It's kind of the best party ever in that way. So that's the rundown of trauma circle medicine. That was really a sprint, but I'm here for all of the questions and conversation about it, because I know that, I don't know, it might not be something that totally makes sense yet based off of what I've presented, but I hope it's starting to like form a picture. I can talk more about any of the examples of conflicts that I've worked through, or experiences I've had, or if you now would be the time, if anyone wants to talk about their personal individual trauma or a conflict, I can help with that, for like how I would mediate it or help resolve it, or just be an ear to listen, because that's equally as important. And there's a lot of people in the world who like have had child abuse done to them, or people who have had partner and spousal abuse, or conflict with siblings or conflict with work. And it's just really important to recognize that like that's not your fault necessarily. Like recognizing that you have a problem is not, it's not your fault that you have it, until you come to that conclusion. And that's for you to come to, not for others. So who is Northwest Permaculture host? Because I would like to call on you. Oh, there you are. Yes.
Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't really know how to make myself talk. This is Shay, and my question is, can anybody hold a trauma circle if there's conflict in their life, and like what's the nuts and bolts of making that safe space? And is that something we need a whole lot of training for, or could any old person approach this with just like a basic, like, learning a bit about nonviolent communication? But is this something people can do, and what is it like?
Yeah, I think there's definitely no, thank you, Shay. Yeah, there's definitely no like expertise required to be in a circle or to host a circle. Essentially, like the host is really just someone who knows how to explain the rules. It's kind of like you're not really like the MC, you're more just like presenting the rules of the game that we're going to play, and then participating as an equal member. So yeah, so the basic function of the circle is really just having some kind of like like thanks, Deborah, thanks for the comment. So to have some kind of like shared medium or way to pass the conversation along. So a lot of people use talking sticks or feathers or stones, or like if we came up with an order for the circle. And the reason why that works really well is because you can pass around this like talking object or this talking stick, talking stone, whatever, and that allows people to, you can pass too, like you don't have to, you can say like, okay, I don't have anything to say, I'm just here to observe. Nobody has to say anything in a trauma circle. Like it's all up to them, to you as an individual. So that's like how you can frame the rules of the game. And then again, like the circle doesn't end, it can go on for days and days, and it might not, they might not be consecutive days either. So it can go on for days and days, they might not be consecutive. The circle only ends when everyone in the circle has consensed. So once you've opened the circle, you nobody's allowed to close it as an individual. It can only be closed as a collective. And that doesn't mean you have to. So let's say like I went to the first 5 days of a circle, of a conflict circle, and then I'm over it. Like I don't care anymore. I've heard what I needed to hear. I've said what I've needed to say, and everyone else still wants to carry on, but I don't. Well, that's fine. Then it will. And then that group will consent when it's time to finish. So you can leave at any time. Any individual can leave the circle at any time, but the circle itself doesn't end until everyone is consented. And sometimes that means every single person has left until the last person. It's just one person standing alone. But the thing is if that's how it plays out, that's just how it plays out. And it usually doesn't. It usually doesn't happen like that, but it's really again about the collective. So yeah, anyone can do it. It's very common sense, and it's definitely the only thing that's difficult about it is that it's not a promise. There's no promise that it's going to work. The only, because it's up to every individual in the circle for it to actually work. And so what I just encourage again is like honesty, needs-based communication, observational information, self-proclaimed feelings instead of feelings about others, more about feelings about when you do that, I feel like this, instead of when you do that, you are this type of way. And work from there and experiment, because it takes sometimes an instant and you've got a resolution, and sometimes it takes a decade and you've got a resolution. So it's about a commitment to working through the traumas publicly. And I love, like, this has made me so safe because I've been able to, like, for example, when that man on the commune in Pennsylvania kissed me on the face, I was able to bring this to his attention. I didn't go to him privately about it because that would make me feel really uncomfortable and inappropriately vulnerable and mess with my nervous system. So instead of doing that, I made sure that there was 5 other people in a circle, a casual lunch circle that we were at. And I chose that time to say, hi, I just wanted to let everyone know that this happened to me by this person and I wasn't comfortable with it. And it doesn't have to be like a physical assault. It could be like this person. So another example I've used in my own company, one of my really great creative designers said something really insulting to me one day. And so I brought it to the whole company and I said, I don't like when someone talks to me like this. So everyone needs to know about it. And so let's talk about it. And it also allows me to be vulnerable, because then what if everyone else in the circle thinks that I'm being unreasonable, that's really valuable feedback for me. So I hope that helps like get it started, because yeah, I definitely think that anyone can do it and everyone should do it. Anybody else have any questions? It's also good, like another valuable thing is to talk about even what we're unsure about. So I've heard in trauma circles that that like where people express like, I don't know if this is trauma, but I want to know, like, you know, it's also a space for asking, was that trauma? Did I traumatize someone? Did they traumatize me? And working through that as a group and as an individual at the same time is also useful. Yeah,
Could you,
sorry. Yep.
oh, could you email us that PDF?
Yeah, so if you want the PDF, I'm gonna drop my email. If y'all can email me, that's gonna be the easiest
Okay.
way for me to do it, but I can also take Hillary's email down right now. So there, I'm putting my email in the chat.
You know, living in philosophy,
Yeah.
your oldest son.
Hillary.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm having trouble raising my hand, but this is Julie.
Hi, Julie. Oh, you might have muted yourself.
I'm holding an experience of how this is the world that I intend to create and live in reality, and how different that is from what is really in the world right now. And I've been holding that the whole time, and now based on some of the things you said, it's like I think I put myself in a permanent circle for this lifetime. Is that like unhealthy? Like I don't close this circle. The circle is, I'm always the last one to leave.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. That's how we see ourselves. Like my friends and I feel the same way as you.
Yeah.
And that's how we see ourselves, is basically that we're never not gathering and circling for the rest of our lives. And
right.
I've just been in that process myself of like, there's more vulnerable spaces, like in rainbow gatherings, that's where I've had the most vulnerability and availability to practice this medicine, and in indigenous spaces. And then there's less vulnerable spaces, like I'm currently in the hip hop community in Montreal and in New York, Chicago, DMV area, and I'm introducing this, and some people, it connects to their culture really easily and they understand what's going on and they relate to it very strongly. And other people, it's very, very, very uncomfortable and very new. And all I can say is like, it's the only thing that has allowed me to do this is my faith in the process. And I've been accused of all kinds of crazy things. Again, I've had the cops called on me for doing this process. Like people get really triggered and really upset, and you have to be brave. But that's all we can do together, is be brave. And I think and when we want to cry and when we want to scream, do that, and because that's part of the healing, is letting out the trauma too. Because I'm really not about the whole good vibes only thing. I definitely believe in like peace and good vibes, but I think that's toxic spirituality to say that we should never be angry, we should never be upset, we should never be angry or hysterical or anything. If that's what our body needs, that's what we should give it, because the body knows best. The body is the source of information, and it's our brain. And yeah, just always listen to your intuition and respect your body's needs, and that will guide you in the trauma circle practice for the rest of your life. Because nothing better than captaining your own ship. And that's really what we want to teach others anyway. That's really like what, whenever we want to share something and whenever we want to share peace, again, starts inside, goes to the living room, then goes to the neighborhood. Yeah.
Galen?
Yes, thanks. And thank you, Eloisa. so much in that presentation, and I know that I'm going to go back and watch some of it again because I took some notes, but there's a lot more in there. I think I guess just mainly offering an observation that, I mean, you can tell from my appearance that I'm a white guy in his 60s, and you know, I grew up in the U.S. I grew up in the Midwest and had a career, and I'm retired now. And what I grew up in and experienced as normal, as the normal way of being in the world, and the normal hierarchies and the place of people and how they should behave and how they viewed authority, how they related to other people. You know, that was normal, right? And so it seemed like the way it ought to be.
Mhm.
And
The
then,
rule of the game.
yes, right.
Yeah.
And you know, in permaculture, recognizing that the permaculture ethics of people care, earth care, and fair share seemed so like, yeah, that's how the world ought to be. And then realizing that it's like 180 degrees opposite of the way the world actually is. And your presentation here is like a very similar kind of thing. It's like thinking about relating to people and being with people, and really focusing on sharing the mutuality of people's needs and respecting every individual for their needs, giving them the space, and interacting with an intent to try to meet everyone's needs. So it just seems like that would be a really nice world. And it's, yeah.
What's coming alive in me from what you said is that, like, first and foremost, like, every single person on the planet has been and is being traumatized by colonization. So it doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, where you came from. Every single person is affected by colonization and is traumatized by it, because by the simple fact that land is property. That's the first violence. And then all other violences come from that first violence, which is that land or people are property. Either one, either that land is property or that a person is property, is the birth of all trauma. So I think that, like, there's a lot of other trauma that can happen, but in terms of just what the large system of colonization, not individual cultural trauma, not individual trauma, but cultural trauma, it's rooted in that. And so we share that. And so it's not fair for people to compete with trauma. There's no competition between blessings. There's no competition between trauma. Instead, again, we're getting down to what are your needs as an individual, because you're a human and that's what makes you valuable, and reframing the conversation around that for us all. Because that is forcing people to get out of their own stereotypes and elitism, and disconnection, which is where people are comfortable. Because like you said, that's what the norm has been disconnection, elitism, and stereotyping and gatekeeping. And that is not where love is. So I really love, like, the practice of again, circling. So I think about the drum circle, and music is one of my favorite ways to participate in peace. And I'm also a Sufi Muslim, like I said, so I really love Sufi Muslim philosophy. And this is my favorite book about, like, that has helped me heal with my trauma. It's called The Mysticism of Sound and Music by Hazrat Inayat Khan, and I just recommend it to everyone. It's very secular. You don't have to be like a Sufi or anything to read it, but it's very secular Islam. And it's about looking, because we talk about vibrations, and we think about, like, how the universe is made up of energy that is vibrating at different frequencies. and matter vibrating at different frequencies. And so this is like a really good book for helping understand it outside of like, I have a neuroscience background, and I spent 10 years in therapy from age 8 to 18. None of that helped me. None of it. Not a day of it helped me. And that's me, my personal story. But this book like solved all, because I'm someone who has complex PTSD, so I have these hallucinations. This was the only book that helped explain the hallucinations to me, and it comes from an ancient practice, because before Western modern psychology, we had to deal with these problems. You know, before there was ever words like bipolar and schizophrenic and whatever, there was just shaman and people dealing with stuff. So like I'm less diagnostic. I'm not really interested in diagnostic psychology. I'm much more interested in like mythology, storytelling, and like part of what's healed me physically from my physical traumas, where people have like beaten me and stuff, is dancing. So like people don't think about dancing as therapy as much as maybe they think of yoga as therapy, but dance, that's why I became a dancer, a competitive dancer, because I was like, wow, this is making my body feel ecstatic instead of feeling traumatized. My body feels ecstatic, it's growing, it's strong, it's flowing, the juices, everything, it's coming alive, it's being celebrated by dance and music. So yeah, I just thought I'd bring that into the mix, because this book is so precious and dear to me. And there's many others, and there's lots of great resources out there, but that's my 2 cents. I think I maybe just got a note.
That was, oh,
That was me, Julie.
Oh,
Sorry.
I can't see it for some reason.
Oh, I'll try to speak it if it's my turn. Do I have consent to have it be my turn?
Please.
Thanks. It's hard for me to put this into words, but there's plenty of words I've been exposed to in the English language that get close to it. I get very confused between like coming into a state of empowerment or self-confidence or freedom to be yourself. And so I'm just saying the difference between empowerment and what's perceived as, it's like that scares people, you know,
Yeah.
because I mean, I'm afraid of powerful people. I'm afraid of superiority and authoritarianism. And that's something that I would love to hear you respond to.
Totally. So I have a few techniques for that myself. Like the first thing that I always tell people who work with me, like very closely, is I say, you're not allowed to be afraid of me if you work with me. Otherwise I'll fire you. because I expect mutual empowerment. So definitely, yeah, I think embracing the fact that humans are dangerous first, and that means you too, is really important to being in a position of power, because I think that people who often are in positions of power think that they are saviors. But we're all flawed humans with limited perspectives. That's why community perspective is actually more valuable than individual perspective. Not
More
all the time,
intelligent.
but it's more explanatory. And especially if it's a safe community. Again, like I'm not talking about like some weird cult that like does really nasty things. Like, that's something else. They need us. But just a regular community, yeah, like really listen to your heart. And I think that the most powerful thing that I've ever experienced is just telling the truth. It's that simple. Like if that means, if that scares people, that's not your problem. That's so not your problem. Like telling the truth and working through the truth is what we all aspire to, in my opinion. And because it's so dangerous to speak truth to power, because that is the system that we were raised in. I mean, I was a delinquent kid. I went from school, I was in 6 schools between elementary and, or if I counted preschool, I was like an 8 between preschool and college. So, and I mean, when I was 18, so before college. So was a problem kid, you know, they probably would have sent me to military school and all that. But really, I was just like really in a highly unsafe environment. And whenever I would talk about what was happening in my household, my parents would punish me and hurt me. So like you can imagine how that's an analog for school environments, and that's an analog for work environments. And so again, I think that people are uncomfortable when you take away control. When you say I'm in control of myself, you're not in control of me. I know who I am. You don't know who I am. That is very frustrating and very vulnerable and very jarring for people who don't feel confident to do the same thing. Like, I'll tell you, like, I'm queer and I came out, and I was with someone else who was queer and they hadn't come out, and they were very upset that like I had this, and it's not that I was any necessarily safer than them. I mean, they have their own personal family issues and whatever, but like it was just the fact that like you own who you are is threatening to people who are still in the system of self-denial. And yeah, it's scary, but it's also like, what are we living for? To be afraid or to really live? I'd like to call on Julie, Julie Wolf.
Hey, I'm here. Oh, that's because I had my hand up before.
Yeah.
I can respond that I definitely am challenged to get the inside out. That's the term I use, to tell the truth about what's going on with me. I mean, the louder the need, right? The scarier it is. So yeah, I mean, so like to walk that line between seeing myself become comfortable with who I am, and then when that other experience comes up, you know, where I see that I'm triggered or insecure or not feeling safe, and you know, not living in a world usually that where you can. I mean, that's beautiful what you said, calling out in a gathering when you need to be supported or you know, you need the community to help you regulate.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's like walking both lines. It's traumatic all my life to find out that my joy and my empowerment and who I really am is scary to people, because I've been so friggin' scared of people. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
Yeah, it is. This stuff isn't easy, but that's the unburdening of ourselves that we're going to experience, is that the more you do it, the easier it gets, the lighter that the weight and the burdens of our needs become, because it's self-respect. Like, I want everyone in this conversation right now to feel empowered, because you deserve that life where your needs are met. Whether it's in this lifetime or another incarnation or another universe, that doesn't matter. I know that no matter what happens to you and no matter what this messed up world does, that you would have deserved your needs to be met regardless, because your needs are precious and misunderstood. And so I really think that we should think of this as a type of self-care, and that when people are triggered or upset by our needs, or we're triggered or upset by the needs of others, we should remember that the respect has to be mutual. That's a two-way street, and step away if it's not working. It's okay. It doesn't mean. I had a huge problem with this when I was 20. I used to think that if a conflict wasn't resolved, it was my fault, because that's kind of household I grew up in. And that's so unfair. Like, your bliss, your happiness, your peace is the priority in any moment. And anyone who wants to threaten that, there's a difference between like coming to someone with a problem and not wanting to upset them with it, but wanting to actually resolve it, versus coming to someone with a problem ready to fight. So if someone comes to you with a problem, they're ready to fight, you have every right. It doesn't mean that the circle is closed, because the circle is everyone. So they can go to someone else if they need help. Because if you're not ready to help, that's your need and you're number one. So they can regulate their need against your need. If you need to go away and walk away from it, that doesn't mean if someone walks away from me when I'm trying to, this has happened to me. I was in Canada. I was trying to resolve a conflict because I had a knife on me. Someone called the police because they're not used to that culturally in Quebec. People don't carry knives. So someone called the police on me, and then I had to go and I got acquitted. So I got no charges on me or anything. But I had to go and try and resolve this conflict with this person, and they kept blocking me and trying to defame me. And it was really frustrating. But at the same time, I'm not in control of them. So I'm not going to let my happiness rest on them. I'm not going to put my happiness into their hands or my self-respect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I want to connect and come together, but in time. And if it takes lifetimes, I'm here for that too. Maybe not, I don't know what everyone's personal philosophy is, but as a Sufi Muslim, I'm okay with incarnation. I'm also, I love the Buddha too. Just like I love Muhammad and I love Allah. And I think that time is an illusion. And so when we can remember and we can let go and we can be here now and focus on that, that beautiful, again, inner peace here first, and then we can bring it outside. So always focus on, it's just like being well fed and watered before you're going to go do something. It's the same thing. You got to be nourish the soul and the spirit before you're going to go to work on it, on the land or the community. And, we don't want to exhaust ourselves, because this work is exhausting and takes time. And it's beautiful though, because that's like when you can tell a whole community. For example, there's a couple of us in my group of cohorts that have been working together. There's a few of us from Rainbow Gatherings who were hosting these circles over the years, and about a third of us were victims of child sexual abuse. And so to be able to connect with each other was fucking incredible. Like, I had never met another victim of incest before until I met other victims. And then nobody gets your trauma quite like other people who have gone through the same thing. So when you offer it up to a community and allow them to connect and respond to you with love, that's just as much a possibility as anything. And in fact, especially in permaculture communities, it's very likely that you're going to be met with love, because people are already in this community, loving life with a capital L, because we like cultivating biodiversity and redesigning our systems and stuff. So we're already thinking about reimagining what the world is like and what it can be. So there's a high likelihood in a permaculture community that you really won't be shamed, and you really will find other people. Because I also have found the pattern in my work that the people who are in these spaces of permaculture and decolonization are often people who have gone through some of the most interesting and complex trauma, because that's why they're here to solve. That's what they're here to solve, because they're recognizing, oh my God, my father was an asshole and it's not okay. Or, oh my God, my mother tortured me. Why? So that's, or my sibling or my spouse or whatever. These are all things that we can bring in. And that's another thing about I love, Julia, I see your messages coming in, but I can't read them in the group chat. I don't know how to look at the private chat. So I don't want to miss them. I don't want to miss your comments, but I can't read them.
Well, if you have room on your screen, you can have the chat be in a little box by itself.
I have
the
it.
chat is down next
chat
to
box.
the left of the screen, of the green screen share. That's chat, or in more if you're too small. But I'm just saying I'm permanently encircled, that equals committed to evolution. I'm committed as spirit beyond this life form.
Beautiful. Thank you. Wow. Yes.
So
I
I can,
affirm.
I'll save the chat and send it to you, Eloisa, if you'd like. Make sure you have that.
That'd be wonderful.
Mhm.
Oh, there it is. No, I see it now. Oh, I see
Okay.
it now. Circling is community, but community is missing because we don't need each other like we used to. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing, is the separation fuels capitalism. The more separated we are, we have to hire specialists to reconnect us. This is about reconnecting ourselves. No middleman. And when it comes to like, oh my God, domestic abuse, this is this perfect space for it, because like, it doesn't have to be like, emotional abuse is just as important as physical abuse. So like, if I have friends who circled with me about 3 times this in the last 6 months, they're a married couple with 2 children, and they've been circling with me because they find it hard to speak to each other alone, but when there's a witness, they're more, it helps calm them down and helps them speak more peacefully to one another. And so they're in that practice right now. And I think that's also important, because like, let's say, and it allows for perspective, because it's not just a circle with me, it's a circle with a couple other women, because I don't want to be a therapist. This is not the ordinary type of therapy. It's something else. It's a different kind of therapy, because the therapy is the community. It's not the single authority. There's no authority on like what's right and wrong. It's the community coming together being like, well, here's my opinion, and then another person offering their opinion, and another person offering theirs. And that doesn't mean anyone has to listen to it. You might go to a trauma circle and not resolve your trauma. That's totally possible too. But you might keep going back and see if it builds for you. But definitely like, I think this is powerful. It's powerful to have witnesses. It's really powerful to have witnesses. Like, I've worked through so many problems with my partners and with my company by bringing people into the conversation, because then the expectation is, if you're going to say it to me in private, be prepared to say it to me in public. That's another thing. To help with the abuse and the manipulation that happens, because sometimes people will talk to me or accuse me of things this close to my face, but then when I bring in other people and I start saying, hey, Shaunacina, something's going on, this person's bullying me, then they back off. And they're like, oh, I wasn't saying anything. So this is why it's so critical. It's people will, community is your friend is all I can say. Like, it takes a village to raise a child. I really believe that. It takes a village to raise each one of us. Each one of us is a child, and it takes a village to raise each one of us. Any more
Well,
questions?
Eloisa, yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we don't have to cut this off, but I just want to recognize that we're at our hour and a half, and if people feel like they need to go to other things,
I can spend about another 20 minutes in the call. So I'm happy to up to 20 minutes I have for any more questions. So I saw someone, Teresa, you had your hand raised?
I did. Thank you, Eloisa. My question, I really enjoyed your conversation and seeing the people here. It was lovely. And my question is this information and how it's presented, not how it's presented, but just simply the information. And in times I've had people use information that is meant to be healing and whatnot, but use it in some way as a weapon. So my ask to you is, how do you handle it? If somebody, there are dozens of things, if not many of the things that happened with me today as I was walking around, that were using similar information, but they were using the information to try to either get a rise out of me, or they were using it to establish their dominance or superiority. So I was just wondering if you had any ideas.
Totally. I'm gonna respond to the vague way, but then I would love to hear if you have a specific example, and then we can get maybe a little bit deeper. But So vaguely, what I would say is that it's good to call people into that feeling. So instead of like calling people out and saying like, this is what you're doing, to say, when you do this, it makes me feel like this. When I share this information and you respond in this way, I don't trust you anymore. It makes it hard to trust you. Can you help me trust you? Can you help me reestablish trust with you? This is how I would like to be treated. Do you consent to that? Because I don't consent to how you are treating me. So that would be the vague way of how I would deal with it. And then if you want, and no pressure, we can get into like an example of what specifically might be happening.
That was very good for the vague, and it's sort of the vague that I was looking for. If I went through, I don't want to take up very much time of the 20 minutes you're extending. So the specifics, I'll let go right now. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, thank you for offering as much as that, because I know that like that is a gift. So thank you. Yeah, that was a great question though. Like bullies are so not, that's so what I'm not about. I'm so not here for bullies. Bullies are definitely hungry for what they lack and definitely project their insecurities onto other people. Like I can tell you about, it kind of reminds me of like my ex-boyfriend who like we would go shopping together and like go thrift shopping together, and we were really into fashion and trying to be cute, so we'd pick out our little outfits and stuff, and he would use like my insecurities about certain things to like push me in different directions. And like for example, like I showed up on a date and the first thing he said was like, oh, your shoes are gross, why'd you pick these shoes, like stuff like that. It's just like so weird. Like someone knows like it matters to you and then they use it, like you said, against you, and then you feel like you need their people who are good at putting you down it's because they want you to need their affirmation. They're putting you down because they need you to need them, and you don't, because someone put them down and then they needed that's the pattern. Someone put them down and they became a pleaser of that person, and so that's how, and that worked for them, or it didn't, or whatever, and that's what they're doing. Then that's the same mechanism that they're going to do, is basically expect that like you should follow their culture. They're proposing a culture. They're like the could be anything, the cut your hair culture or something, or the, like my mom used to say like that I smelled like a homeless person, so like the wear normal deodorant culture or whatever. And we have to just, what do? We say, I'm happy. I'm sorry you're not happy. I'm happy. You don't need to change anything about yourself. I don't need to change anything about myself. But if you don't like how I smell, you don't like how I look, stay away from me, because you don't bother me, but I bother you. That's your responsibility then. For sure. Yeah. I'm glad that Ricky got something out of that response too. Yep. It's important, guys. Like this is about self-respect. This is about reclaiming ourselves first. That's the first land back that we're going to reclaim, is our bodies. Yeah. So focus on that and honoring that, and defend your own nervous system, your own heart, your own spirit with your life, because that is who you are. That is your life. And that's the self-defense bit. And self-defense doesn't have to be ugly. Self-defense can be as peaceful and as simple as, hey, I don't like that. Hey, I don't consent to that. That's self-defense.
Could you share on inviting, like how do you invite people into a space? Any tips on that, into a trauma circle space?
Yeah. The first most difficult thing is like people the people who are the most averse to trauma circle medicine are people who don't believe they've ever been traumatized. So that is difficult because, again, as I said, everyone has been traumatized by colonization. So it doesn't matter if your parents didn't beat you, they said nice things to you your whole life, you're well adjusted, you have a good 9-to-5 job. It's not always about you. In fact, maybe your privilege is a great thing to bring to the circle. So like everyone has a place in the conversation. And that's what I would say from the beginning is like, I think I never tell people like, oh, you're traumatized, but I suggest like, I think everyone has been, I think everyone has been traumatized by colonization, and that might invite intrigue. And that's my personal like method. And then the second method is again, or the second part of the conversation is like, but even if you do feel that you've never been traumatized, then your perspective might be really valuable in the circle then to help other people heal. Because maybe you've got, and I say this without any sarcasm, maybe you've got a nugget of wisdom that people really need because you've been well cultivated. So like for whatever reason, and that doesn't mean that like, again, being traumatized, because some of the most traumatized people are the most well cultivated people too. It's all about how you respond, because plenty of people who have had very charmed lives are very vulnerable and not resilient to changes. So trauma happens to everyone at some point in life. So the more you understand trauma and prepare for it, the more well adjusted you're going to be. And it's not just you, it's other people. So now you can understand trauma in others. Because it's not just like, okay, I have trauma and this is all about me and my healing. No, this is about community healing. Do you love community? Do you love humans? Like, that's where it begins, because trauma circle medicine is about love and peace for the people who have had the least of that, but also the most of that. It's all there. That's the thing. We invite everyone to the circle. That's what makes the circle so special. Everyone has value in the circle. And that's how I would invite people into it, is to say like, we find value there. We find healing there. We find community there. Let's try it out. Let's see how we feel when we just open up. Patricia, hello.
Trying to unmute. There we go. Thank you very much for this talk. It's got me thinking about a lot of things. One of the biggest things, I've done a lot of nonviolent communication and conflict resolution and such over the years also. And what I find in the world as it is right now, or as it appears to be, is one of the hardest parts of establishing, that connection is when we don't even agree on the same realities.
Yeah.
When facts and everything, and this really kind of triggers me, because I was in a long marriage that in retrospect, I feel I was gaslit practically the whole time. And part of the problem there is I don't have a great memory.
Yeah.
And, now that I'm in my 70s, it's even worse. But it's hard to know whether I'm not remembering it or someone else is presenting it in a way that they know it isn't true, but they're still going to present it as if I'm nuts.
That's already the problem.
Yeah.
You can never do that to people. That's horrible.
You don't know. But the thing is, you don't always know that you're doing it, because, he may have honestly believed that that's what happened. And I honestly believed that that's what happened. And that's
how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Yeah.
And it's like, I can remember so many times I said, where's the videotape? Come on, let's replay that and see what really happened.
Exactly.
You know?
I felt the same thing. I felt very gaslit in my household and by many of my partners as well. And oh, let me respond because Julie asked was gaslighting.
Yeah.
So gaslighting is when you deny some feeling or experience that someone else says they had. So there's a fine line between disagreeing and gaslighting, because gaslighting usually involves denying someone's reality over and over, like repetitively. And so it's a form of control, because you get to control the narrative of what's going on. And this person has to submit to you and your narrative, or else you're going to abuse them or cut them off. So yeah, all I can say about that is that you and everyone are so precious, and it's terrible and it's harmful to simply call someone crazy. It's really violent, because crazy doesn't have a lot of value, that word. It's very vague and it's dehumanizing. So the assumption that we have to make for ourselves and for others is that we're not crazy, and that we can figure it out. And we have to be empowered and empower ourselves there. And I think that your intuition is correct. And even if you did have a completely false reality, that's your reality. And people don't get to just take it away. Because like, I'm someone, I have hallucinations. Talk about gaslighting. I mean, I see straight hallucinations and angels talking to me and stuff. So like, if people told me that's not real, I have to be like, it's real enough to me. Because it is. Because otherwise then I would be like, then I would get scared. If they said that's not real and I told myself that's not real, that would be weird. That was not productive narrative for me. That only made me more afraid of myself, more afraid of reality. The feedback got only wavier in the nervous system, versus telling myself, what you're seeing is complicated. What you're experiencing is complicated. It's interdimensional. It's multidimensional. Other people might not see what you see, feel what you feel, even staring at the same situation. But this is between you and God. This is between you and yourself. This is between you and the earth, you and the stars. So how are you going to turn whatever happened to you, whatever you've seen, transmute that, compost that, recycle that into something that's going to serve you again? Because you deserve to be served in that way. You deserve to service yourself, service your heart. And in doing that, you're going to help heal the people around you too, because that's, again, the methods that you apply to yourself, you can apply to others, and you'll be able to recognize when other people suffer like you, like how I recognize your suffering and I feel it and I share it with you. And I would never diminish your suffering, because that isn't fair. And that's, again, that's not the point of what it is. We don't diminish each other's suffering. We accept each other's suffering. And that's how we're going to move past it. But yeah, people, I mean, I had another ex he's a great permaculture designer, a total maverick in the space. But I remember I told him, you're hurting me. You're doing this. These behaviors hurt me. And he said, and I said, and it's traumatizing. And he said, I didn't traumatize you. And so he went on to create a narrative in our community where he said, yeah, Elsa, like, she's too sensitive. She's just immature. I didn't traumatize her. She's just too sensitive. That was the beginning of when I became a trauma specialist, because I was trying to talk to him about my child abuse. And he was gaslighting me and told me that, like, oh, everyone has dreams like that. Oh, everyone has something. And I knew in my gut, I was like, no, not everyone goes through what I go through. I don't think so. I don't think so. And that was the beginning when I realized, that was the day when I realized no one can tell you that you've been traumatized or not. Only you can decide that for yourself. So the same thing happened. So then years later, on the flip side, I had another ex who told me, hey, Elsa, you traumatized me. And so I was ready for that because I had done the work. So when he told me that, I said, oh my God, I didn't mean to, but I did. And that's what ends the gaslighting. That's the conversation that ends the gaslighting, was when I was like, you know what? God damn it, I did traumatize you. Let's talk about it. I don't want to do that again. Let's break up, but let's make sure that this never happens again for either of us. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and one more thing that I'm going to talk about because it's so important to me with the spiritual community, because I hang out with like a lot of people who do sound healing and yoga and meditation. I know that's kind of our jam for many of us. Well, again, along with the good vibes only thing, there were people who, I'm a trauma specialist 10 years in. There were people who would tell me, who have no experience working with trauma on a mass community scale, like thousands of people like me, and they were telling me like they didn't want to hear about my trauma because I'm bringing the energy down. And I'm like, no, when you hear about my trauma, I form trust with you. If you don't want to hear about my trauma, I disconnect from you. I was teaching them that. I was like, if you can't handle my trauma, you can't handle my friendship, because they wanted me to fit into a role of a character in their movie that acted a certain way, walked a certain way. I'm like, hell no. I'm like, I'm about to trigger the fuck out of you because not on purpose, not because I want to, but if you're gonna know who I am, better buckle in, because otherwise it's not worth my time. Because I don't want to pretend. I spent my childhood pretending, like, why I'm gonna pretend now? That's not what I lived and died for, was so that I would just be afraid of reality. No. So yeah, just again, people with this whole like crying, screaming, releasing trauma, that's beautiful to me. That's art to me. To other people, they don't get it yet. That's all I can say. I'm like, oh, you don't get it yet. You've never screamed your lungs out at the moon and felt how healing that was, to be honest, that you're in pain. To not pretend. You don't have to pretend that you're not in pain. That's denial. You're not going to transmute the pain if you pretend you're not in pain. It's okay to be in pain. It's okay, because it's feedback. The universe gets that feedback too. You tell the universe, I'm in pain. The universe recognizes that causes pain. What just happened between those people, that causes pain.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I just want to say that because I know that there's a lot of snake oil salesmen in the trauma and healing community. And yeah, I can say the only tools I have against that snake oil is bringing as many perspectives as possible in, and remembering that pain and suffering are natural as the menstrual cycle of a woman, of a wombed person, as natural as the shedding of the skin, as the regeneration of the cells. And to pretend like we're all supposed to be well adjusted and happy and relaxed and cool girl, like when the whole world is literally on fire, the land is being raped, I'm being raped, we're both screaming out for help. You can be raped spiritually, you can be raped physically, you can be raped mentally. The idea is it's an extraction from you. It's taking from you unconsensually something. And we've all had the land taken from under our feet, like I said. So it starts there. Because we're not allowed to be on any land in most parts of the world without paying some feudal lord a ticket. so that we can
Yeah.
survive. So again, it's like, this is about consent, because none of us consented to that upon birth. We didn't come out and say like, I choose to be a American capitalist who pays rent. It was like, that was implied, that was already someone else opted into that, or struggled, or died for that, or for not that. And now we're just in the aftermath of whatever came before. But luckily we have this opportunity, just like anyone, to make a better now, to make a better tomorrow. But always a better now, always a better now. Like, I really love the be here now and the peace now, and focusing on that is the most important thing. And the most bioavailable thing is your own breath, your own feet on the ground, your own affirmations. Like, again, this book, I just can't say, this book has a whole page of affirmations at the end. These affirmations I carry with me. I have another copy of these affirmations right here. I was just reading them before the thing, because I read them almost every day. I have the page ripped out from my last copy of the book. And, you know, this is like, I'm well and happy in life. I affirm. Guide me for the purpose which I'm born on earth. I affirm. My balance is secure in the hands of spirit. I affirm. Like, this is the stuff, when we affirm it, we create it. That's how powerful we are. That's what they don't want us to know. When we affirm it, when we affirm who we are, we create that. We recognize that in ourselves. And also, again, another big part of why I love being a Sufi and why I love this Sufi mantra is because the fundamental first paragraph right here, where it explains it, says, these sentences were composed by Hazrat Inayat Khan to be used according to the needs of each person. So every single person on earth can affirm these things. And in doing that, we recognize that every single person deserves these things. So part of when I affirm, I deserve happiness, I deserve peace. When I really think about that and what that means, I can recognize each one of you does too. And I know that that seems so simple, but it's a quantum leap. Simple, but difficult. Like, you know, it says here, bless my life with every bliss. Well, if I'm going to say it for myself, am I supposed to think other people don't deserve every bliss too? And that's, again, focusing again back onto the consent, back onto the anti-gaslighting. And bliss comes in different forms. Nobody can tell you that's your experience. Like, if I say I'm happy right now, I'm blissful, and someone's like, no, you're not, you're just pretending. That's horrible. That's so mean. Like, you can't tell people what their realities are.
Right.
So yes. So I think we just have a couple minutes and then I have to get off, but I've had so much fun with everyone today. And I'm so grateful for this connecting with you and being being receptive to the information. Because this is my favorite thing to talk about. Again, this is really like where I get the most in all the climate work that I do, is when I get to talk about trauma, because I know that we're praying for peace. Because that's what it is. Because ecological peace is the same thing as inner peace at the end of the day. When we really understand what is peace, we understand that it's about a balance. It's about a give and take. And that give and take has to be respectful, mutual, symbiotic, and it's important. Like, peace is the road, or peace is like the compass, and the road you're gonna walk to get there is up to you. But definitely, yeah, we're walking that road together. So thank you for being a part of my journey.
Thank you,
Well, thank you.
Eloisa. I just want to say, keep going. Oh my God. Thank you for incarnating and joining us here, because yes, keep going, keep going, keep going. This is great. This is what we need.
Thank you so much. That is
Yeah.
really kind.
Yeah. And on the artwork we're using right now, the three core principles of permaculture, with the caring for the earth and people and that fairness.
Yeah.
It's in like this triquetra that is like a peace compass. And that's something that we like talk about trying to like cultivate in the way we do our work. And I'm just so glad to have heard everything you've shared tonight. And I'm so happy that we get to bring this about being a conversation that we're sharing. Thank you for being with us tonight. That's all.
Yourself.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I'd like to thank those of you on the committee, Galen, Julie,
Julie.
yes, I'm totally spacing, for hosting these. It's so great. And I'm absolutely tickled because 2 of my friends from Tacoma are on the call too, that I haven't seen
Wow.
in 4 or 5 years, something like that. Ricky and Teresa, we used to be in the Tacoma Permaculture.
Sorry about that.
And all that. So it's just great to see friendly faces again.
We lost you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, my computer.
Yeah.
I thought I had enough battery in my computer, but I didn't want to just disappear on everyone.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for staying up to midnight for us.
No problem. Nothing makes me happier than this. So thank you everyone for being here with me again, and stay in touch.
All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you. I hope we find a way to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take
Good
care.
night, everybody.
Peace worldwide.
Thank you, everyone.